Hi from San Francisco. My name is Amy Karle. I am a bioartist and a futurist. I focus on what it means to be human at this time of humans and technology coming together. This dynamic range of how our exponential technologies could lead us to an enlightened future or to our demise, depending on how we use them. I explore this through creating artwork using those exact technologies as tools in the process, with a focus on healing and enhancing the body and society. I'm concerned with building a healthier and more inclusive world by using our technologies to get there, being mindful of integrating that into the technologies and biotechnologies that we develop so that we can use these interventions for our best and highest good. My current projects probe how exponential technology and interventions can alter the course of our future. Projects include beating heart sculptures speculatively designed to improve function that explore physical, emotional, and evolutionary impacts on humanity. I push the limits of additive manufacturing in healthcare by making my artwork. One example is regenerative reliquary. This bioartwork is made from 3D printed scaffolds for stem cell culture into bone, installed in a bioreactor, with the intention that human mesenchymal stem cells will grow into bone tissue. This bioartwork pushes the limits of additive manufacturing for healthcare because of the requirements of the work. I wanted to make something that looked uniquely human and was human scale. Usually these kinds of 3D printed scaffolds and bioprinting work is done in a lab on a very small scale. Because it was human scale, because it was a hand design, this actually ended up being the largest 3D printed scaffold known to be made for cell culture. Different developments were also made in the process as well. It required new materials to be made and digital and additive manufacturing technologies to be further developed in order to handle this kind of scale. I work as an artist because art is the way that I communicate the best. My hope is that my artwork is an inspiration to others and also could make an impact and developments in the healthcare and medical field as well. It could be a tangible contribution or in mindset. My goal is to open minds of how we can use our technologies for our best and highest good, to empower us and to empower humanity. I believe additive manufacturing is not just a tool set, but it's also a mindset to use these tools to create a better future. I feel I'm in good company here with these outstanding leaders in the field today. We're all envisioning a better future and using our additive manufacturing technologies to help us get there.
My name is Jenny Chen. I'm the founder and CEO of 3D Heals. I also work as a neuroradiologist. So in my daytime profession, I interact with digital images all the time. So 5 years ago, I went to a radiology conference and I got in touch with this 3D printed anatomical model. And now is the moment of transformation, I will say. And ever since, I've been very passionate about learning and promoting 3D printing in healthcare. And the other thing I realized is the technology is relatively inaccessible to people not just want to do 3D printing, but also people who are in the startup world. And I think a lot of people share the same sentiment about that. So we started to organize events to get people together. So the 3 missions that 3D Heals has, one is to connect people. And right now we're primarily a virtual platform. And second is to educate, because without the foundation of what 3D printing can do, you really can't do much. But more importantly, I think we're focusing more is the discovery part of our mission is to discover innovators, startups. In the past year and a half, I have been spending a lot of time to try to discover, help startups in the healthcare 3D printing and bioprinting space.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Laura Kastenmayer. I'm the responsible industry manager for medical technology with focus on additive manufacturing at TRUMPF. For all of you who are not familiar with the company, TRUMPF is one of the world's leading companies for machine tools and laser technology, but we are also a pioneer in metal 3D printing. So we offer machines and equipment for metal powder bed fusion, but also for laser metal deposition. We are located in Germany, in Ditzingen, and that's where also my office is. So I work in Germany as well. We got started with additive quite early and really focused on making this technology more efficient, more cost reliant and more accessible for everyone. And that's also my goal here. So I'm, as an industry manager, focus not just on the market or the industry, what the needs are, what the development is, but of course I've lead a lot of internal discussion about new developments, maybe new materials we can incorporate in the process, and therefore also the challenges and the requirements that come with these new developments. And pushing the limits of additive manufacturing means that I support our customers, the medical device companies that have new creative ideas, new applications that they want to print, to create, and I support them throughout the whole way to achieve that. And not just supporting the customers, but also supporting the industry by giving speeches, taking part in discussions, conversations, and workshops to really see where the technology is heading and to really support the technology to evolve and to get better. And this also includes not just talk about success and best practices, but maybe also sometimes discuss setbacks or obstacles or mistakes you made, very open-minded to show everyone who's involved in 3D printing or everyone who wants to get involved with 3D printing that it is possible, that it is a success, but maybe sometimes it needs some time or some adjustments, and that you don't have to be afraid of that.
Hi everyone, I'm Chengxi, CEO of Satori, UK-based professional 3D printer manufacturer. Satori means enlightenment in Japanese, which reflects our company's user-centered approach. We do not develop 3D printing technology in silo. Instead, we connected closely with our user experience. Our ultimate goal is to bring this aha moment to users where their innovation is maximized. Our professional 3D printer is desktop size and affordable, which can be applied to support business practices in industries such as dentistry, jewelry, and engineering. In particular, our recently released 3D printer, ST1600, aims to improve the dental practice, such as produce surgical guide, teeth model, and aligner. Compared to the traditional method, we help the dentist save money and time. For example, 7 teeth model can be produced under an hour, and each model will cost no more than £5. When dentists pass on the cost savings to the patients, this will allow dental care to be more affordable to the patients. Although dental care in 3D printing application is not completely new, what we're trying to achieve is to make this technology more accessible by keeping the high quality, but lowering the 3D printer price from the industry norm of over £20,000 to under £3,000. So how we challenge the limits of additive manufacturing in healthcare? We do this by driving innovation in dental care with affordable and professional 3D printing technology.
Amy, I think this group of women, I'm very happy to be with this group of women. And I think we kind of tells a very nice story of an overall picture of the evolution of 3D printing and application of it. I think when I saw my first anatomical model, like I said, it was very visually appealing, and it kind of inspired me down this journey. I think you as an artist, in a way, is that starting point of many people when they saw fascinating work and they're like, how did you create that? What is this? Wow, the wow moment that everybody was talking about. And then it comes down to me, I'm more of a clinical aspect trying to apply, but what we really need is better commercialization of the technology. And that comes down to the startups and then later on more mature companies who have been a startup in the past, but now bigger. That will, that's Laura. So the startup is Chengxi, and then Laura is the bigger company now is world leader and mature. I think that this continue, I'm just hoping that this can continue to grow like this from inspiration point to a mature world leader in the industry and continue to grow with different verticals of applications and technologies. That will be my hope of the future. And I'm just really glad to be part of this today.
Yeah, I think if I just jump in here right away, I think we are already on the right track, because almost 7 or 8 years ago during my studies, that was the point when I got in contact with additive manufacturing the first time. And I wrote about additive, so I studied medical technology, and I wrote about in my bachelor thesis about additive, how to use it for the medical technology for healthcare. And I remember back then I was really impressed what the technology can offer and what you can really print with these technology. But there were not so many companies back then. And I was wondering, why is that, and why are the companies hesitating? I mean, there is so much potential with this technology, and what is going on? And you mentioned that there is some evolving, some development there. And yes, there is, and there was. And I think right now we are on a very high level, where there are startups, where there are universities, where there are some people doing it in the private home. And then there are the big companies using 3D printing for medical devices or tools. And I think that's a huge field where we are at the moment. And I think there is still some potential for further development and involvement. And that I'm really happy about.
I think for 3D printing industry, it definitely requires a big picture. And it has always been my mentality that to ask myself, what is the key problem and how can we connect dots to come up with the creative solutions? And from my perspective, 3D printing technology itself is never a solution by default. It only becomes solution when it makes sense in two aspects. First, to save money, and the second, to be convenient. And in order to save money and be convenient, we need to adopt the big picture of the whole user journey. And therefore, it's very key to have a collaboration, not just for 3D printer, but also the material, the software, and integration of other techs. An example could be in dental care. In order to have a perfect 3D printed teeth model, you first have to have the 3D scanner to acquire high quality data and then process data properly and set up for the successful print. So all of this cannot be done just by one component of 3D printing. Has to be an integrated approach and see the connection, and therefore collaboration is very important for this industry to thrive.
For me, though, this is really the key of how can we make something we've never been able to create before? How can we fulfill a need in the market or a need in society to help heal people, to use this for healthcare and make developments that we haven't been able to do if it wasn't for 3D printing or bioprinting. It's more of this thinking of how are we going to use this as an approach to healthcare and use this as an approach in the industry to move us forward. Because in the future, 3D printers, what are they going to become? Like we don't know yet what that's going to look like, what that's going to develop into, but it's our thinking that's going to drive that forward into the way that we can continue to advance additive manufacturing in healthcare.
Absolutely. And we mentioned it multiple times so far, collaboration is the key. And I think best example is today here that we are not just having a discussion between machine manufacturers or some 3D printing expert on the industry side, but I mean, we have Jenny, which is the best, who's the best example for that. She is in a medical field, like an active part of that. And still she makes some time to get involved with 3D printing, to figure out the technology, to get all the information. And that shows that it's not just some technology that machine manufacturers or the industry is looking forward to develop further, but also the operators or the medical experts, they also get involved, they discuss on a very high level, they bring in some new ideas, which then in the end result into new technologies, new developments. And I think that's really what makes this technology so special, that everyone is involved and that there's a big collaboration. I think that's something we really need to get to the next level and to push forward.
Amy, you brought up a really interesting point. You said 3D printing can make stuff that couldn't be made by other conventional methods. I think that's a really good point because we have a lot of problems in this world and a lot of problems that we're solving, and we're having more and more problems as we evolve as humanity. And those are worthy problems: saving lives, improve longevity, health quality. And a lot of times current technology simply cannot do that. And to be able to solve those problems, making stuff that we couldn't make before would be important.
It also brings us out of our silos because we have to collaborate to address these problems. We need the material scientists, we need the researchers, we need the technologists. All of us need to come together to build these tools to address the problem. So I think in this way, we have overarching issues, overarching goals, things that we need to provide for in healthcare. And those big needs are what bring people together. So additive manufacturing is one of the new tools that we can use to solve this, as included in an array of exponential technologies that we have available to us now. So it's really important that we use this wisely.
Yeah. And Amy, you mentioned that 3D printing is a mentality. And I think now we have a sort of a crisis in our society. Although we see the rapid development of technology, but we actually lose the ability to innovate as an individual. Because in the consumerism culture, you tend to consume innovation. You buy those technology devices to use. But I was quite baffled by the situation whenever I ask people, what would you like to 3D print if you have a 3D printer? People normally pause and said, I don't know, because they're so used to that the innovation is presented as an end product. But 3D printing technology itself is quite special. It itself is just a tool. Empower people to produce whatever is in their mind. And then it leaves a big question to us, what would you like to print? And this kind of mentality to take creativity under our own control is very important for innovation and pushing the boundary.
You know, as we work with these new tools too, our brains develop, right? We have ways of looking at the world differently first, because we have ways that we can visualize that we've never been able to before. But we can also start thinking differently. Like when we think, what can we build with this tool that we've never been able to build with in different ways, like make interlocking mechanisms, for example, or work with bioprinting. That starts giving us ideas and innovations in the process that lead us down whole new ways of thinking. So we can make developments that we've never made before too, just by working with the tool and working through these processes.
Yeah, and I think in general in our society, I think innovators, or including startup founders, are a minority group of people. It's a smaller, much smaller group of people. They're willing to take more risk, try new things, think differently, going outside of the box. Even though 3D printing has been around for 30 years, it's still a very new technology. I think from the mindset that you guys are talking about to even the knowledge of how to use a 3D printer, the fundamentals, are still a very limited, in terms of knowledge, it's still very limited to the public, to the general public.
We're contributing to this knowledge base. We're the pioneers. We're the ones that are starting this. And I think this is also too why it's important to have women and minority voices as part of this conversation as well, because we're developing this technology. For me, it's really important that our technologies are inclusive. So the more people that are adding their thoughtful consideration to the use and development of this technology, that's going to be a better product in the end. That's going to be a better tool.
Yes, I absolutely support that, and I think that's one of the issues why additive still needs some time to be available for everyone, or to get familiar with the technology. If you only get like the conventional way taught at school, at university, or somewhere else, you always think that way. And if you have the possibility to be 100% creative, to think outside the box, I think a lot of people would do, but they are so used to the old way of thinking. And I think that's also something we have to address. One thing is diversity, so that everyone is able or has access to 3D printing. And the second one is that we have some basic education, some basic knowledge where you can get started from. And I think that's also something that we started to address, but needs to be addressed further in the future, so that everyone knows about 3D printing, about the potential, about what to do with it, and then you can bring in creativity and your ideas.
Yeah, and I think there should also be a mentality change in this regard. Because for 3D printing, you cannot expect it to be like 2D printer, where you just press a button of a print and then everything will get done. Although I admit that from the manufacturer side, there is more work to be done to make the user journey as smooth as possible. But the essence for 3D printing is that you cannot overlook the active human input. For example, the way the file is processed and how you arrange the layouts on the print, that will have a significant impact on the efficiency and the quality of the final print. And if people really dive deeper, they'll find a lot of fun in 3D printing process, because there's no one way to print it out. You always discover something surprising along the journey. So I think first, when people approach 3D printing, they cannot expect it's a very lazy work where you just let the machine do the work. They need to have a creativity and active input. But on the other hand, like Laura said, we need some fundamental education, and also from the company side, they need to have a high quality support program that can help the user navigate, not just about the troubleshooting, but most importantly, what is the optimal way to get the work done. And when people recognize there's more work behind just the machine press the button, then they will find more fun and more engagement with this technology.
I think we also have to be, I think, a little bit more brave and more open-minded about the difficulties, the setbacks, the obstacles we have to overcome to really be successful in the end, because no one is perfect. Like you never are. And if you get started with 3D printing, there will be some setbacks, which is totally fine. I mean, you get started, you have something new in your mind, and then you get started, you take the first steps, and of course there will be something not working out the way you want it to be. But I think that's something we also need to share, because when I have discussion with customers or with anyone involved in 3D printing or anyone who wants to get involved with 3D printing, they're always a little bit, okay, but if my idea is not good enough, if my business case is not solid enough, and I was like, yes, but we have to get started at some point. And if there's a setback, okay, that's not perfect, and maybe you want to be successful right from the beginning, but that's business. And I think this is something we also need to share more often, and we have to be brave enough to share that, because it shows what we have achieved in the past and what we can achieve in the future. And it also includes development and involvement. And I think that's very important if you want to bring a new technology to the next level.
I think everybody brought up really interesting points in the last couple of minutes. I think one issue we're trying to actively address is the education part for 3D printing, because I think better education could improve the adoption process, like you all said. And I actually had a very interesting conversation a couple of days ago with another educator talking about why don't we have a college class for 3D printing for every college? Why don't we have high school, earlier education? I think it's because part of it is because we're on a page of the history book of 3D printing. And this is where we are. This is how the market is, where our technology is, and the market demand for certain labor force is. So if you only have one or two engineering position open for 3D printing, then it doesn't make sense for all the universities under the sun to have this 3D printing degree or curriculum. But I do foresee that the market is going to grow, and the demand will grow more and more, and we will have more. And I think we all are seeing a trend that more universities and even high school and even elementary school are going towards introducing this new technology into the world.
When we talk about education for additive manufacturing, we mainly focus on the engineer, of course, because that's the one who has to deal with the process, the setup of the machine, the design. But is it also something that we should think about integrating into the medical curriculum, like for the surgeons and for all the people directly involved in the medical business?
Actually, it is already getting incorporated slowly. The educator I was talking with in their school, in the medical school curriculum, it's an elective, which means it's an optional educational track that they can select, and some people do select that track. So I think here is actually where industrial collaboration would help. Like if you guys can help the universities and medical schools to establish this printing center, either at a lower cost and make it cheaper for them, educational license or software, it would really help to scale up.
Yeah, and also I was thinking, how do we define education in 3D printing industry? Because maybe one of the bottleneck why it cannot be adopted on the larger scale is the industry itself is changing very fast. Because even when we're doing the resin 3D printer, just a couple years ago, the whole focus was on FDM, and now we're putting to another phase of the 3D printer, and now the metal 3D printing has also become more and more trendy. So I think one concern for education institute is that by the time they come out with a curriculum, then the information will soon be outdated. And so I was thinking, based on the conversation of collaboration and also adopt the big picture, maybe the education in the 3D printing industry need to be done beyond just the school, such as those press and specific media, that they need to take more responsibility to educate and probably have some class or some program to help people on a going basis to learn what is really going on.
Big issue that I hear about a lot of people contact me from different fields, especially young people, and they're having issues with accessibility. So they are hungry to learn about 3D printing. They don't have anywhere to go to access a 3D printer or access this knowledge. And, I usually try to tell them, look at your local colleges, look at your local schools, see what is being offered. There's a lot of classes that, cover the range from medical and pharmacology to architecture and art. but just to kind of see if they can get their foot in the door and access something. Even that, though, a lot of people don't have access to, or smaller towns might not even have that at their local community colleges yet. How would each of you suggest that people can get involved in 3D printing if they're just starting out and they want to learn about it? How would you address this issue of access?
I think for a young person or a person who's just getting a beginner, doesn't have to be young, is to get your hands dirty. Like Laura said, just do it. Get started somewhere.
Well, I think that's the thing. It's the whole workflow from the initial CAD design and the digital environment, and then working through how to select the right materials for what you need to use, and all the way through to the process. So there are also opportunities for using free CAD software. There's a lot of free CAD software platforms online. I personally like Mesh Mixer. It's really easy. And for younger people, even like Tinkercad for children that are interested, because this is where, the young generation, to know that these tools are available to apply in their industry, whether it be healthcare, engineering, or just, a myriad of industries, to understand this whole process and to get started where we can with the free tools. Once someone develops something that they want to get printed, they don't need to buy a printer to do that. There's a lot of online platforms where you can upload your model, see it rendered. All of that is free. See what it would look like in different materials, pick the materials. So I think that there's even those options to start getting the ideas of how this works, even before the access to the printer.
You are a student at university and there is some facility who has a 3D printer. Use this opportunity. I did it myself, and it was a huge benefit to get in touch with this technology, to have first-hand experience. It really helped me to understand and to choose for myself if I want to go down this path, if I want to stick with 3D printing or not. And what we also do as a machine manufacturer, we don't just support universities, but we also support companies that set up a pilot production. So we have projects going on where a company decided, not just as a job shop or as an education center, but as a company, to have the whole process chain in-house, from design to final finish of the part. In the end, they can use all the tools. This is also something we offer, that we work on.
So the larger hospitals, research centers, pharmacology companies, a lot of them have an R&D division in 3D printing, in additive manufacturing. So, just a reminder, don't be afraid to reach out to those departments if you're interested in it. Ask if you can come see what they're doing, talk to them about what you're working on.
And yeah, I would add to the accessibility issue, because compared to 7 years ago, we have people who start to adopt the 3D printer, like those hobbyists. But I think after 7 years, now we're in a different phase where we're looking forward for 3D printing to be accessible on the practical sense. What we mean by practicality, that is, it produce end products that is functional and also make economic sense. And that kind of accessibility, unfortunately, it takes a longer time. First, from the manufacturer side, you have to maintain a high quality of the technology, but in the same time, innovate your manufacturing procedure to lower down the cost. Because in order to be accessible by people who are using it to produce end products, it has to be affordable first, and to justify the cost.
In what ways can we push the limits of digital and additive manufacturing to support ending the COVID-19 pandemic and support our frontline workers, support our patients throughout this process?
We should look at, what's going to happen 5 to 10 years down the line. What other similar problem that we're going to have? Another pandemic. How do we meet the supply chain crisis that we met, this past year using 3D printing, right? So this is, I think, is a time. Maybe you're not going to get the biggest customer right away as a 3D printing manufacturer, but maybe you'll get more customers because you're now spending time to think about how to meet that demand. If this kind of scenario happens again, you will be the first person to step out and say, we can help you.
The corona pandemic also affects the metal business, and many companies have started to think about their supply chain, as Jenny already mentioned. So it's not just about, okay, can I get a face shield or a mask or anything at the moment, but what does the future bring? Maybe I should think about not relying on my supplier who's located somewhere on the world, but maybe I should think about bringing specific process steps in-house. And that's when 3D printing comes into discussion. So many companies think about integrating 3D printing now or get started, because it takes usually some time to integrate it properly. But maybe to integrate it now to be better prepared for the next pandemic that might happen, who knows when, and then they can continue producing their parts, their items, without depending on any company somewhere in the world who's not able to ship or deliver the parts. So that's also something that has started within the last few months and the last year. The companies really rethink their process chain.
Yeah, and I would add that not just about the production side. I think 3D printing enlightens us on the whole big picture of digitalization. So in order to have something to be 3D printed, as we said, you have to have the digital format of file. And to acquire that file, you can make it from scratch, or you can scan it from the data. And that requires people to transform the mindset. For example, in dentistry, in the past, maybe dentists inclined to do the physical dental impression, which will touch the patient's mouth. But with the 3D printing idea, they start to reflect about the whole process. They might digitalize from the very beginning to use a scanner without even touching the patient's mouth. So that will help them to transform the way they're doing things, and then finally become more resilient towards a disruption like the COVID, where they have to be concerned about the hygiene and also the disruption of supply chain. So I think, yes, 3D printing is one solution, but most importantly, enlightens us to see the bigger picture of digitalization. I think for healthcare 3D printing, right now it's more a top-down approach where the technology company come out with a machine, and then people working in the industry, they learn how to use it and to adapt to them, their use. But I think ultimately in the near future, I hope that people working in the industry, they're so engaged that they come to the manufacturer saying, hey, can you customize the machine for this use? A lot of the dentists, they are struggling to learn about the machine, and also they accept the fact that this machine is what it is and they cannot really change, which is not the case. So I think ultimately when people who are using the machine and the people who are producing the machine can work together, and then that would make this whole experience really elevated to a different level.
The moonshot I'm working towards is making an entire integrated system of digital and additive manufacturing to create replacement parts. So in my ideal vision, we would use AI to help diagnose deformity and diseases. So doctors can use AI platforms to look at big data of, for example, what 10,000 healthy heart patients look like, and help use that as another tool in the process of potentially identifying a problem earlier on, to feed into a CAD system that would use generative engineering and generative design to pose the replacement part. Then a patient's own genetic material could be used to actually bioprint and grow the replacement part, using robotic assisted surgery or robotic implant surgery to put that part back into the patient, following up with personalized medicine for anti-rejection or, you know, their healthcare needs, maybe even having a printer on their counter at home at a patient's like own kitchen counter to be able to make them personalized medicine.
So recently we collaborated with a Morocco artist, and he mentioned a lot that he didn't see 3D printing separated from artistic experience, although it seems to be like left and right brain. But when it comes together, you can produce the end product that just fits so well with the end use. So I think one thing that we need to emphasize about the creative learning from the artist is the empathy, be able to integrate the emotion into this innovation process.
So if you have a technology that you are able to play around with, to try something new, to think outside the box, this pushes your brain to think in a new direction. And maybe in that case, new ideas come to your mind that can be turned into something that is beneficial for your business. So it doesn't mean always that playing around is a waste of money and time. It means that it could be the first step to something new, something great, which is maybe also something completely new. So you can create a new business. You don't have to print something that you have manufactured in a traditional way before. You have to create something completely new. And I think with additive and with the artistic aspect and the creativity that is involved, this can be done.
But honestly, for me, the most inspiration, the most ideas, the most innovation comes through working through the process, to keep working every day. Like, I don't necessarily wake up every day and say, oh, I have all these ideas. But as I get working and as I work through the tools and the machine, something might happen that sparks my interest and gives me an idea of the next way to go. I might have some conversation about developing materials with a material scientist, or bring together a material scientist and a biochemist, and then hearing them talk about how to solve my problem gives me ideas too.
It's about this mindset to jump from one framework to another and elevate to a different level. And I think for whatever work we're doing, we need to keep the excitement going on. Life has so much uncertainty, and you cannot rely on objective factors to decide your move. And sometimes I think it's more important to follow your heart and to have this passion to drive things forward one step at a time. And I think the future for 3D printing and the healthcare in 3D with the 3D printing technology is limitless if we keep this passion going on.
I talked a lot about investing in healthcare 3D printing and how I'm passionate about the industry. But I think the ultimate vision, like Chengxi has said, is you need to expand your horizon a little bit more. I think I want to invest in a future healthcare that's more accessible and personalized. So to me, a decentralized manufacturing process would actually envision and enable that vision. So to expand the concept of just 3D printing, in healthcare would be a more decentralized and personalized healthcare for the future. And that's what I'm going to invest in.
You both wrapped it up very, very pretty and very awesome. And I absolutely agree with all of you. I think, yeah, we are with additive, there's huge potential. And as the technology itself, layer by layer, we have to uncover more potential, more benefits, more ways to use this technology in the future, especially for an important industry like healthcare, where we can use every tool, every advantage we can get, especially when we see like times like these in the pandemic. And I think we're on the right way. And I think additive is already an important asset for healthcare, and it will be in the future. And I'm very happy and I'm very looking forward to contributing to that. One thing is on a technology side, but the other thing is, of course, keeping the discussion going, educating more and more people, showing them what additive can do, just like be enthusiastic about it, but also be realistic about it, and then take the next steps from there.
So for me, it's about constantly working, continue to work through the problems, continue to work through the tools and the technology, and to keep having this focus on trying to solve our problems, because honestly, where we're at right now, the technology is not developed yet to achieve all the things that we can envision that we want to do. I know I can confidently say that for myself in the little bit that I've talked to all of you as well. I know that you have visions and dreams that are much bigger than the technology provides for now, but it's people like us that makes the technology move forward by keep working through those, by keep trying to tackle those problems. A lot of times the workflows and the technology are not available to make, especially some of the bigger things that we want to achieve. The finances aren't there. So how do we solve those problems? How do we make that happen? There's a lot of different ways to approach those problems. And that's where the creativity comes into play and the innovation occurs.